Okay, day two on Mishlei 2129. Let's review what we did yesterday. So, Hayes ish Rasha b'fanav v'yashar hu yavin darko is the way it's written, and then Yachin darachav is the way it's written. Yavin darko is the way it's read. So the wicked man is brazen with his face. That's how we translated it. I think we're going to see different translations today. And the upright person understands his way. Okay, that's the way it's read. The way it's written is prepares his ways. Okay, so we have our questions. Whose way does the Yashar understand? When it says Yavin Darko, is it the way of the Ish Rasha or is it the way of the Yashar? Two, what is the relationship between Panav and Darko, right? So if there is a relationship. So he does this with, the Ish Rasha does this with his Panim, and the Yashar does this with his way. So what's the contrast there? Three, what does Rasha mean in this context? Four, how is this a characteristic of the Rasha? Is the Rasha really that readable? We usually think of reshaim as like cunning, and they win people's trust and infiltrate and all this other stuff. So this makes it sound like he can just be read, or at least he could be read by the Yashar. And also just how is this a quality of a Rasha? Five, why focus on Panav, on his face? Six, does Panav have to mean his face, or could also mean bifanav, in his presence? And if so, then whose presence? The Yashar, God, or someone else? So I think Ellie asked that question, and I did have a chance this time to look through the Mefarshim. No one says it means in his presence, that I saw at least. So I'm gonna cross that out on the assumption that grammatically somehow it doesn't work out, even though I can't explain why. It's a good question, but I just don't think we need to take into consideration. Seven, what is implied by he'ez in Hefil? Like he makes his face brazen. What kind of action is that? Like what is he doing? What is implied by the fact that this is the only action he's doing in the pasuk? Doesn't sound like he's doing anything else. Are we to understand that he's doing other actions and then this is like the cherry on top, or something like that? Eight, what is the outcome of He'ez Rasha b'fanav? What's the consequence? What's his motive? What does he intend to do? If this is even intentional, maybe it's unintentional. What is the consequence? Nine, what is the context or the scenario in the pasuk? That's going to be the big question. Is this describing a perpetual quality of the Rasha, something that's always true of him, or is it only under specific circumstances? 10, what does Yavin mean in this context? Or what is the ksiv of Yakhin? Does it mean that he will understand or he should understand? 11, what does Yashar mean in this context? 12, what does Darko mean in this context? Or Drakav in the ksiv? Are the two halves opposites? If so, who's the intended audience and what is the practical application? Okay, we had that many questions. All right, so quick review of the one idea we had yesterday. So this idea was ventured organically from the shiur, but then I read my written interpretation of it from years ago. So it was based on Saadia Gaon. If a wicked man makes brazen his face, it is fitting for an upright person to understand his way. That's in Hebrew. Im he'ez ha'adam harasha es panav, ro'oi liyashar shiavin es darko. So the way that we understood it is that the Rasha is someone who wants to impose his will on reality and to make everything subordinate to his own end, which is some sort of self-glorification or power. So when that drive is thwarted, he's going to have a special type of anger that is it's almost like a righteous indignation. Like the fool can get angry when things don't go his way because he wants a certain pleasure and he's not getting it. The Rasha, it's almost like a challenge to his very existence. Like Ellie was saying yesterday, like Haman, when Mordechai doesn't bow down to Haman, he flew into a genocidal, rage. So there's it's like a frustration of his entire existence, and it's a challenge of his entire presumed place in reality. So that's going to show on his face. And the mistake that you can make is you could look at the Rasha doing that and think that that there is oh, he's just angry, But in other words, you can underestimate what that anger can lead him to do. But the Yashar is going to understand the Rasha's way and know that if this Rasha feels like he's been thwarted in this way, he is going to go out of his way to take revenge and to double down on his efforts and to do something extreme, And that's what's alluded to in Yakhin Drakav. I think this is me misunderstanding David's interpretation. That I don't remember what David actually meant, but I said that the Yashar will understand the way of the Rasha, but then as a result, the Yashar will Yakhin Drakav. He'll prepare his own ways, meaning he'll take whatever practical precautions are needed to make sure that the Rasha doesn't actually implement his plan. I think actually what David said is David said that this reminded him of another pasuk where the tzaddik like sets a trap for the Rasha. So the Yashar here will prepare the way for the Rasha to fall. And I said that I like that idea in general, but I don't think it fits with the word prepare here, because prepare usually is for the good. So I prefer to say that the Yashar will prepare his own ways. Yeah. By the way, is David there and he's off camera, or he's not there today?
He's not here.
Okay, fine. All right. I just wanted to make sure that I want to ask him if I was understanding correctly. Okay, so that's what we said yesterday. I guess before we go to Mefarshim, any questions on that idea, or did anyone have any other ideas that they wanted to suggest? I forgot to post the Hitler memes. All right, I'll do that. I'll try to do that. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I told you I had an example in mind of a specific Rasha doing this. So I feel like I showed this in another shiur earlier in the year. I don't know if it was here or Monday night. Do you know who Goebbels was?
No.
He was Hitler's propaganda minister. Okay, so there is this famous picture. Let me just see if I can find it. Oh, actually, no, I showed it to my. Hold on a second. Photo. So there's this famous picture. I'll tell you before it shows up. Where so this is like one of the second like in command people. I mean, he wasn't in command in the military, but he was he was like Hitler's like right hand man, in charge of all the propaganda for the Nazi regime. So there was an incident where a guy was photographing him, and it was like a normal photo shoot, and then Goebbels realizes that the guy is Jewish, and his face changes in the middle of the photograph. And it just is so that's his smiling face. It's still kind of an evil smile, but yeah, that that he finds out that the guy is Jewish, and just this evil glare. Now, I'm not saying that that's what Saadia Gaon was saying, but the glare of the Rasha, who like the existence of this Jew in front of him is like this Jew who's freely taking pictures of him or whatever, like is just elicits this horrible anger. Oh, by the way, I forgot to just support what I was saying with Saadia Gaon's actual commentary. So this is what Saadia Gaon says, very short. Inyan yavin darko kadesh yisrachik mimenu. So what does it mean that the Yashar will understand his way in order to distance himself from it? Ukadeshi yinhag imo bezihiros, and so that he could conduct himself with caution around him. Ukadeshi yachshosh mimenu, and so he could be worried about him, meaning that worried that something's going to happen. Ukadeshi yilmad b'mesh yarelo, and so that he could learn from what happens to him. Yeah, so that's supporting the idea. Okay, so let's go to another interpretation now. I was intrigued by Metzudos David. Okay, very short. So Metzudos David says like this: He'ez Harasha mare azuso be'es ka'aso. So the Rasha will what did he hold? Hold on a second. Oh yeah, sorry. Metzudos ציון is the one who said Panav is beka'aso. Okay, is his anger. יכין upaneha lo hayula. Oh, actually, you know who says this better? Rashi. Rashi says he'ez ish Rasha b'fanav. Harasha mare azuso b'shas kaso, and he says b'fanav is lashon af. B'fanav does not mean face here; it means anger. Footnote here says Panav hu hakas hapnimi. Panav is internal anger. Kamosh of Shamar Yaakov, like Yaakov says, achapra Panav. I will like appease his anger. That's about Esav, I think. Avato rugzo, rogzo. I will negate his wrath. So in other words, Metzudos David is translating it as wicked man shows his anger. Or is brazen in his anger. I'm not sure how the Metzudos does it. Let's see what the Metzudos actually says. But the point is that he's not learning it as face, he's learning it as anger. Okay, Metzudos says, Harasha mare azuso be'es kaso. Yeah, so he's saying the Rasha is brazen at the time of his anger, v'lo yisbonin b'masav, and doesn't contemplate his own actions. Aval hayashar, but the yashar yavin darko b'chol ace, he understands his way at all times, af bisman hakaas, even at a time of anger. Okay, so it's interesting here. We were learning it with Saadia Gaon as an interaction between the Rasha and the Yashar. Metzudos David is taking it as the Rasha in isolation will demonstrate his anger and he will not contemplate his own actions. And the Yashar presumably will not demonstrate his anger and he'll understand his actions even when he's angry. So the question is, what's the idea here? And also, how does this, how does this work? Like, the Rambam says that, hold on, let me look at the actual source here. I made a episode about on the Stoju podcast about the whole Will Smith, Chris Rock thing and anger. Not that Will Smith is a Rasha, but he did get angry. And I quoted this Rambam. So the Rambam, which is it's a good example of what happened to Will Smith. Anger is a very bad trait. This is in Hilchos Deos 2:3. So it's a very bad trait, and it's proper for a person to distance himself from it to the opposite extreme, and to train himself to not get angry, and even on something that's worthy to get angry over. This is not the part I wanted. Okay, I mean, he says a lot about anger, but this is the part that I wanted here. He says, the early sages said, anyone who gets angry, it's as if he worships a Avodah Zarah. Amru, this is the part. That anyone who gets angry, if he is a chacham, his chachma is removed from him. And if he's a navi, he loses nevuah. So the question here is, how can this yashar maintain his misbonin b'ma'asav, his ability to apply bina to his actions, if kaas by its very nature interferes with your chachma? So the question is, what's the idea? But that's the problem, though, to me, is that how can he be yavin darcha b'chol eis af bisman hakas?
Do you have to necessarily read bisman hakas as he's getting angry? Can't you just say it's in a time when one would get angry?
You could read it that way. I mean, it sounds like, though, that if this is an opposite of the Rasha is making his face brazen at the time of his anger, which means in the heat of the anger. So I would assume that the Yashar is going to be also in the heat of his anger. He's going to understand his way. David, did you hear the Metzudos David just now, or do you want me to reread it?
Oh.
What was that?
I did not hear it. No.
Okay, so he says, "Harasha mara azuso be'es kaso." The Rasha demonstrates or shows his brazenness at the time of his anger. Below yisbonin b'masad, and does not apply bina to his own actions. Aval hayashar, but the yashar yavin darko b'chol es, he applies bina to his way at all times, his own way. Af bisman hakas, even at the time of his anger. And Sean was asking, does that have to be at the time he's angry, or could it be when he would get angry? And I was saying, based on the way that Metzudos is interpreting the first half, sounds like in the heat of his anger.
Okay, that's fine. I would have actually thought the opposite of what מצודת is saying. I would have thought the Rasha actually does have an idea of what is angering him at that moment, where he'll see a general system that he's trying to have work and have that happen.
Yeah.
And he'll see exactly what's not happening. So I would have thought the opposite of that the Rasha would understand what's making him angry.
Okay, so I guess the question is, what does it mean that yisbonin b'ma'asav? Because you're interpreting it as understanding the causes of the anger. I was interpreting it as understanding what his own behavior is going to be, like applying bina to how am I going to be what's going on inside me and how's that going to manifest itself in Maaseh. And that I think I was taking it that way because of the Darko also.
Okay.
Not the causes, but the effects, I'm saying. Yeah. I don't know if you have to take it that way, but that's how I was taking it.
Could you go back to the Rambam for a second?
Yeah. That was the phrase.
guys also get these?
All right, and can you switch back one more time?
Yep. Oh, sorry. To Metzudos, yeah.
Yeah.
What does that sound?
I have no idea.
Maybe construction.
I didn't know we had construction in yeshiva. The whole thing changes when I leave. I have an approach, unless anyone wants to say something.
Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I'm trying to think where to start. Let me start off with the second half, actually. Okay, so I think it can't mean that, and maybe this is kind of like a way to read the Metzudos the way I want to read it, but accomplish what Sean wanted to accomplish, is I don't think you can think clearly when you are angry. Okay, like I think, or at least there's always a potential that your thoughts are going to be distorted. However, the yashar knows that anger, he knows the distorting capacity of anger. He knows that when you're in at the time of anger, your thoughts are going to be distorted, and he might even actually understand how he behaves when he's angry. So for example, people have different patterns when they get angry. Some people are very aggressive, some people like make impetuous decisions, some people are, you know, what do you call, lash out like in a cowardly way, like in lashon hara, you know. So the yashar, though, the yashar is going to know how he is predisposed to act when he gets angry, and because of that, he'll devise measures. He'll prepare. Maybe you can read this into the ksiv. He'll prepare himself ahead of time for the time when he gets angry, so that he knows what to do and what not to do. So, like an example of this is, I heard this. I've read this in several places, that Abraham Lincoln, when he got angry at somebody, like let's say, like, you know, someone in, you know, in the realm of politics, government, or whatever, so he would write an angry letter to that person and say everything he wanted to say, and then he would take that letter and then seal it up and then put it in a drawer in his desk, and then he would write a second letter, you know, and the second letter is the one that he would send, you know. So he knew that the way that his anger expressed itself is feeling the need to tell the guy off, you know. And then the problem is, if you actually tell the guy off and you send it, then it actually gets, you know, you could actually like create consequences, you know. Or like my dad's advice of, you know, give it 24 hours and then you see it differently the next time. So what this is doing is, in the time of your anger, your thinking is still messed up, but you know ahead of time that your thinking is going to mess up when you go into that state of anger, and you could take precautions in advance. So that's maybe how the yashar can avoid this. But what does the Rasha do? So the Rasha is what is anger? I mean, this is kind of connected to what the Rambam is saying about kilu ovid avodah zara. It's as if you're worshiping avodah zara. Anger is really when you are, you know, demanding that reality conform to your vision of how it should be, you know, and which is a very childish, infantile way of looking at reality. And what's happening is you're setting yourself up as the measure of what should and shouldn't be. And because the Rasha is locked into that, then he can't subject himself to any objective framework where his actions even could be analyzed. In other words, take the yashar. Yashar, who does what I just said, is saying, look, when I get angry, I can't think clearly. And the angry version of me is going to be operating and making decisions in reality, and that's going to have real world consequences. So he's distancing himself. He's like having I don't want to say this literally, like an out of body experience, saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. The angry version of me does things that I'm going to regret. So like, I have to like, you know, put that guy in a cage until he calms down. But the Rasha is locked into his subjective world of anger. So he can't even see that his thoughts are being distorted, or that his actions are not going to be like operating in something that is a realistic framework. So he's totally far gone, in that anger.
Yeah, I have two thoughts. One of these I think you're saying, but I can't tell which it is. So I'll just say both. One sounds like that since he is like, his whole way of operating is that the world conforms to him. So like he is effectively like an anger machine when things don't go that way. And I was also thinking that then, insofar as like what you're talking about, like preparing, that like Yashar will prepare. The Rasha, I think, like fundamentally will not allow himself to prepare for things not to go his way, because that goes against his whole philosophy of how the world works. Yeah. So he can't. It's impossible for him to prepare himself.
That's a good that's a good idea. Like he can't even face the possibility that there's going to be a need to prepare, because how could things not go my way?
Yeah, and his philosophical stance is then going to lead to problems for him and mess him over then.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Good. That's good. Good supplement to that idea. Okay. Any other questions on that, or should we go into a different one? Okay, let's go into a different one. So I saw here the fake Ibn Ezra, and again, we think that this is oh wait, no, sorry, not the fake Ibn Ezra, the Rid. Okay. He is ish Rasha, Mishu Rasha, someone who is wicked. Meiz b'fanav shel Bastin. He is brazen in you know what? Okay, it's possible you can read this the way that Ellie Miller wanted to read it. Actually, I'm not sure. In the presence of Bastin, maybe. But the reason why I'm doubt, because he uses the word panim here, which does mean face. So I'm not sure if it's in the presence of Bastin or he makes his face brazen with Bastin. Let's see. Umetiv ta'anosav, and he like embellishes his claims, the azus panim, with brazenness, kedei lahamin kazavav ushkarav, in order to make people believe his lies and falsehoods. Okay, v'yashar hu yavin, but the yashar understands. V'im Bastin hu yashar v'da'atan, and if the Bastin is upright and intelligent, yavin miyad es darcho uksavav shumashaker, it will immediately understand his way and his lies, that he's engaging in falsehood here. So first of all, where does he get this Bastin thing from, do you think? And we all theoretically know the answer to this question.
Previous pasuk,
right? So the previous pasuk said, Eid kazavim yovid ish shomea lanetzach yidaber. A false witness with lies will perish, and an ish shomea will speak forever. So he's taking this from the courtroom setting, and I was thinking of I guess hold on. Let me just read one more interpretation. Someone else said this as well, and then we could just kind of like take them together and then try to figure out the idea. I think this was the Rinach maybe. Let's see. His second interpretation in the Rinach says V'yesh mefarshim shechozer al mashkas lamala. This goes back on what was written above. Eid kazavim yovev ish shomel nezach yidaber kishavu shnei edim levestin. When two witnesses come to Bastin, o shtei kitos, or two groups of edim, achas shakranis, achas amitis. One of them is false witnesses, and the other one is a group of true witnesses. Matzdikim ha'achas umachazvim ha'achas v'hashakranis me'iza b'fnei hamachachi shasa. So matzdikim ha'achas umachazvim ha'achas. I don't know what he means by matzdik here. Sounds like he's saying one of them will, I think, make righteous claims, the other them will make false claims, and then they'll deny it. I'm just going to try to get a sense of it by reading on. But the Yashar, Hu Yavin Darko Shel Shakran, B'drishosav V'chakirosav Achis Ames Ha'emes. But the Yashar will understand the way of the lying one through his questions and interrogations until the truth becomes verified. V'yihi mishpat hakazuv, and therefore the pasuk is saying, He'ez ish Rasha b'fanav shel machukisho. Okay, you know what? I'm not understanding what's going on here. Hold on just a second here. Yeah, let's take the Rid's way. Okay, that this is talking about in Bastin. and a certain brazenness that occurs in Basting from trying to assert lies, right? So he's saying that, so the main point here is he's saying that the Rasha is going to engage in embellishment in Basting and be brazen about it in order to make people believe his lies, but the Yashar will understand his way and like see through it. So what is he? What's the idea of this pasuk according to him? And I think the key lies in the brazenness of the lying. Like there's lying and then there's brazen lying in order to like dupe Basting. Anyone have any intuitions, or should I venture something?
I have a thought. I feel like it's not all that deep.
Okay, that's fine. And I also have a thought, and I don't know if it's that relevant. So go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, just does sound like what he's saying, that a Rasha sounds like this is going to be, in particular, like a guy who's very good at building himself up. That so he will, inventing Anna style, double down on a lot of things to get everybody to leave him. So like, I think at least he's putting in a bet in situation. But when someone is like that in on it, then they do assume his truth, his saying the truth. And this sounds like a Yashar does have some intuition. You can tell there's something up with this guy, and it sounds like the Yashar is also not a fitting person to be on Betin, where he can then, like, if you need a detective, it sounds like Yashar is your type of guy then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, good. So I think my idea complements what you're saying, but again, I don't know how relevant it is. It might be I'm reading it into it. So I'm going to state my idea, and then I'll state the unity between what you said and what I said. So there is a phrase which I've never actually looked up in its original source. It's called the big lie. Okay, and I guess it was popularized by Hitler. So here's apparently the source in the inside. So this is from Mein Kampf. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to read this whole excerpt here. So he says, yeah, okay, let's just read it here. Okay. But it remained for the Jews, with their unqualified capacity for falsehood and their fighting comrades, the Marxists, to impute responsibility for the downfall precisely to the man who alone had shown a superhuman will and energy in his effort to prevent the... Okay, that's not the relevant part. This part's relevant. All this was inspired by the principle, which is quite true within itself, that in the big lie, there is always a certain force of credibility, because the broad masses of a nation, meaning like the masses of people, are always more easily corrupted in the deeper strata of their emotional nature than consciously or voluntarily. And thus, in the primitive simplicity of their minds, they will more readily fall victims to the big lie than the small lie, since they themselves often tell small lies in little matters, but would be ashamed to resort to large-scale falsehoods. It would never come into their heads to fabricate colossal untruths, and they would not believe others could have the impudence to distort the truth so infamously. Even though the facts which prove this to be so may be brought clearly to their minds, they will still doubt and waver and will continue to think there may be some other explanation. For the grossly impudent lie always leaves traces behind it, even after it has been nailed down, a fact which is known to all expert liars in this world and to all who conspire together in the art of lying. So that, I mean, we've seen, Hitler use this, and we've seen people use this throughout, the pandemic. Not going to name names, but there is a difference between the way that ordinary people lie and the way that a Rasha lies. And so it's not just the scale of the lie, but it's, I mean, he even uses the word impudent. He uses the word azus panim, but that's not the only thing that makes it people get away with it. It's the fact that, like, the masses who react to it would be like, well, no one would be that brazen to tell that big of a lie or to double down on it that much, So the main thrust I'm getting from the Hitler thing, from what David said, and from what I'm getting from this Rid, is that the Yashar understands that reshaim lie in different ways than other people do, and will not be seduced by the brazenness of the lie, and in fact will be spurred by the brazenness of the claim to be even more diligent in the investigation and driven to, like, expose the lie. So like that, I think that's like the sketch of like what I would what I would say for this pasuk, even if we don't get the details. Another example of this is I just saw, so I'm rewatching season 4 of Better Call Saul because I haven't seen, and season 5 just came out on Netflix. So I want to like do Chazara on season 4. So in season 4, there's this like support group for people who have, I think it's like they've lost, I forgot what the support group is. It's like a support group for people who have like lost family members to various, I think, I don't know if it's to anything. It's basically for like people who can't get over their grief, you know? So there's a guy who gets caught making up the existence of a wife who died from cancer, you know? And he's been coming to this group for months and telling, you know, story after story. And he's finally detected by this guy who's like a very detective-y guy who like spots that there's inconsistencies in his story. You know, like he says this memory of his wife who you know goes to you know, like he had some memory of her you know, the husband and wife like were at the stadium like for this night game, and like they you know, this detective guy realizes like, you know, stadium lights weren't invented back then, so like there couldn't have been any night games, you know. So the point though is like no one caught this guy because no one's going to be so brazen as to make up a wife who died of cancer, you know, and like try to perpetuate that on a group of grieving people, you know. So the point is that there's, you know, don't assume that other people lie in the same way that you do, and realize that like you can't judge you know, you can't judge other people and assess whether they're lying or not based on how far you would go, because the Russians are going to go much further than that.
Yeah, I also have another thought while you were reading that thing of the big lie. I also think that there's some sort of like, I think helping a big lie is that when a Rasha is already like in a high position, people assume that like, oh, this guy's got a lot of things going for him. So I think there's like more to assume that like things are like he's for real and he's legit about everything that he's saying. Whereas you were like some like scum guy on the street, like, okay, like he'll just tell lies like that. But when someone's got everything going so well, like he must be in the right.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Right. So in other words, the success of the Rasha in terms of like his material success or his success in prominence or whatever, strengthens the masses' reaction of like, oh, he's not going to need to make recourse to that, or he's not going to risk it all, or he's not going to, you know, like he's not a low light. Like people are going to use the aura of the Rasha in various ways to justify the fact that he can't be lying. Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right, let's do one more. Rabbeinu. Okay, so the Rabbeinu Yonah has a perush, and then he has a treat. Okay, which is he tries to unify the previous 4 pesukim, and in doing so gives additional explanation for the lates. So I've never read this before because I haven't done this pasuk. So let's see how far we get. Hey, is Ish Rasha Panav. This is okay. Nismach Indian Zelamasha Kazav Lamala. This is also connected to what it says above of 8 Kazavim Yoved. False witness will be destroyed. V'amar, it says Ki Ish Rasha Kasher Yaid O Yiton Divrei Kazav. When the Rasha will testify or make false claims, Yichazik Panav V'Ya'iz Panav B'das Uv'Kavana. He will strengthen his face and will make brazen his face intentionally, with knowingly. Laman Yamnu Devarav, in order that his words will be believed. Ki Yivchad Pen Yavinu Devarav Yakiru Befanav Ki Sheker Yidaber Umira Befi, because he's afraid that people will understand his words and recognize his face, that he's speaking falsely and deceiving with his mouth. V'chichashu Befanav Yaneh. And I'm not sure how to translate that. V'chichashu Befanav, and they will deny it in front of him. Yaneh, he will answer. I'm not exactly sure how to parse that, because a person is ashamed from speaking falsehood. Therefore, he will make his face even more brazen, so that people recognize that he's will not recognize that he's lying. So it's similar to what we were saying before, is that the Rasha will engage in some sort of like tactic using the impudence to make sure that he's not caught lying. Okay, I don't know the subtleties of what he's saying. V'yashahu v'yavin darko lo yo'il oz panav l'neged ha'ish hayashar. So this brazenness of the face of the Rasha will not work in front of the ish yashar. Ki lo yachtal ba'avur oz pnei harasha laharbos kakirosav. He will not cease on account of the brazenness of the face of the Rasha. He will not cease laharbos kakirosav to have many interrogations. Ad asher la'emes yoti mishpat, to the point where the truth comes forth in law, in justice. Ki kvar yodea hasheker. Sorry, Hayashar midas ish Rasha ki ya'is Panav. He knows that this ish Rasha is going to be brazen like this. Kasher yiton sheker or ya'id alav iluhu emes barer, when he testifies about it as if it's true. Okay, so far it's saying similar to what we were saying. Gam yitachin sheyakri b'fanav ki sheker yidaber. It's also possible he'll recognize on his face that he's speaking falsely. Ki mirov pachado pin ya'ane kachashu b'fanav. Yeah, he must be saying kachashu b'fanav in some other way. That must be an idiom I'm not aware of, because it's the second time he's used it. Out of abundant fear that he pin ya'ane kachashu b'fanav. Ya'is Panav yoser miderech mesapre ha'emes. He will be even more brazen in the manner of truth tellers. Mizos yivchan v'yakir hayasher shel emes hasheker yischavin. And through this, he'll discern and recognize, the usher will discern and recognize that this guy is intending to lie. Hold on.
Yeah, it sounds like it sounds like the Rasha has like a certain like too good of a poker face. That there's like a certain the looseness that when someone speaks the truth, I think there's a general looseness. This Rasha seems like he's so good at what he's doing, holding it in, that the Yashar will note that and say that's something in truth.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. In other words, there's two ways that the Yashar spots the Rasha. One is he knows that reshaim operate this way in general, and the second is he sees it on his face, meaning he sees the actual like tell, that he's doing it. Okay, let's read this fun part. Okay, which there's a lot of methodology here, which is going to kind of like I don't know what to do with it. Okay, but we should read it for starters. Ata sim libra. He says, now pay attention. Okay, Rבינו Yonah really tells us to pay attention. These bonin and understand. Ki seder elu be'elah mikros has doing bezeh. Understand the order of these pesukim. Kol hamidos haraos. All of the bad midos. Ki pasach bahem b'mesha amar. It begins with what is stated. Zayd yahir leit shemo. The malicious. He learned it as malicious. Haughty man. Leit is his name. This is what it's calling a guy who has these two midos. Ki hazadon kol ha'achzarios. Malice includes cruelty, vesinas habrios, and hatred of people, vahakilus, and stinginess. I don't know where that's coming from. Ki midas ha'hatava hefech min hazadon. Well, he says where it comes from, because the trait of beneficence is the opposite of malice. Vahihirus hiagaiva, and haughtiness. Yihirus is haughtiness. Vihine arba midos. Those are four midos. So what are they? So malice, haughtiness, stinginess, and what is he including? Late as the fourth one, or is he including sinus abrios as the fourth one? I'm not sure. Okay. Then he goes on. So malice and gaiva also include jealousy. Okay, now this point I think supports something that I believe, I can't remember if Sean came up with it initially, but I know it came up in our analysis of the lates. Includes jealousy. Kiakina pam tavumina gaiva. Jealousy sometimes comes from haughtiness. Ki lo yachpots shetihe ma'ala v'yisron leish bahavaso hasrara ala brios. Because a person does not desire for any other person to have a stature or an advantage over him due to his love of authority over people, okay, or power over people, dominance over people. Upa'am tavo min hazadon, and sometimes jealousy comes from malice, misinaso es habrios, from hatred of people, of yakut b'yisronam, and being disgusted by their superiority, ma'alasam, and their advantages, ukvodam, and their honor. So in other words, we said this, I think, when we were analyzing the lates, that the lates can't stand that other people are more superior than they are. So they're going to have to shoot down any form or manifestation of superiority that makes them feel inferior. And he's chalking up to kina, to jealousy. Gam kolalos od hazadon v'gaiva es midas hakas. This also includes the trait of anger. Okay, meaning malice and haughtiness also include anger. Ki hazadon hefech haraton, because malice is the opposite of raton, of acceptance. I think he's saying acceptance here. Al kain yafre v'yisge mimenu hakas. Therefore, they will. I don't know what he means by yafre here. It'll be like fruitful. Anger will like multiply and be seized in him. Zehu inyan amro ose beverzadon. That means he'll act in anger. V'chein hagaiva mishoresh hakas. Also, arrogance comes from anger. I would say the other way around, but ki tashlich avose hasevel min ha'adam. It throws off the chains of tolerance from a person, or the footnote here says it's supposed to say seichel. Okay, his haughtiness and his arrogance and his wrath. Okay, the lates includes malice and haughtiness. And they encompass 6 traits. And afterwards, it mentions laziness, which is the 7th trait. The hifsik b'mikra. Okay, here's one methodology point we'll get out of this. It interrupts with the pasuk zoveach zevach reshaim toeva, that the offering of the Rasha is an abomination. Mipnei shehu medaber b'midos ha-reshaim, because it's speaking about the midos of the reshaim. Al kain diber b'gnusam, therefore it degrades them. Vashenis, and the second reason, mipnei shehizkir the tzaddik yitain, that the tzaddik will give. Kimaisei tzaddik ritzuyim v'zevach reshaim toeva, that the actions of the tzaddik are favorable and the offerings of the Rasha are an abomination. Achar kach hizkir midas ha'azus v'amar, and afterwards it mentions the trait of brazenness and says heish ish Rasha b'fanav v'hi hashminius, and that's the 8th. V'hiktim ele inyan eid kazavim, and it precedes this with a statement of a false witness. Ki hakazav yavi ha'adam el ha'azus, because lying brings a person to brazenness. Mipnei shu tzarech ela penya kiru inyan hakazav b'fanav kasher biarnu, because a person needs brazenness lest they recognize his lies from as we explained. Valmidas hacharata lo diber. It does not mention the trait of regret. Ki hacharata she iskaret adam min hamidos hanimsaos betoledes robnei adam halo tovahi. Because regret, which is found in many of these midos that people have, is a good midah. So the thing I want to bring out of this Rבינו Yonah is, first of all, I don't understand all the subtleties of what he's doing, but you see one thing from here. He says that this is a seder of mikraos, and it's listing 8 character traits, but it interrupts with pesukim, with pasuk 29, just because it's speaking of the Rasha. It just speaks about the offering of the Rasha, but it's not part of the actual seder. So the takeaway point here is, when we are trying to figure out, when we sense that there is an order to a certain cluster of pesukim, we should not feel forced to interpret every single pasuk as an essential part of that cluster. In other words, there might be like a drop-down menu for like a side point or a tangent within there, and we don't have to feel the need to like make them all on par with each other. So, and Rבינו Yonah does this if you look through Mishlei. Okay, I wish I could explain the rest, but we don't have time right now. And let's plan tomorrow to move on to a new pasuk. Really quickly summarize here. So we reviewed Saadia Gaon's idea of the anger of the Rasha. Then we had the Metzudos David about the acting in anger, and how the Yasher knows how he's going to act in anger, and therefore he can prepare ahead of it time. But the Rasha is so caught in his egocentric worldview that he can't even see himself as being subject to anger or needing to have other plans. Then we have the Rid and the Rabbeinu Yonah, who both focus on the lying in court, and that reshaim lie in a different way than ordinary people lie, but the Yasher can understand that.
I have one other thought on the Rasha line, that I think there's also to he himself, like how he could probably also start believing in his lies when they're like so preposterous, and like he has to find a way to make them work, and in a way that he'll probably actually make them work and be true to himself too, and he'll start believing them.
Okay, that's also true, right? He has to buy into his own lies, right? Yeah, that's good. Okay, good. All right, so Bli Neder, new pasuk tomorrow, and see you then. All right, have a good day.
Thank you.
All right,